Hi, everyone. We are entering week 6, and that means you have finished Project 1, the comparison contrast essay, where you looked back on the changes in your life over the last year, mostly due to COVID, and reflected on how those things have changed. And I'm always interested to see how there are both positives and negatives. And it seemed like a lot of you were discovering some of the positives, which is great because despite the fact that it has been hard and somewhat lonely and boring over the last year, there are definite takeaways I think that I can apply to my life that I can see as positives. So for this next project, Project 2, the illustration essay, we're asking you to shift focus a little bit more and think about your own identity. As you know, over the last year, we've had some pretty big events happening in the United States and in our world. And that included the Black Lives Matter movement and the protests that ensued after the death of George Floyd. And obviously, the issue of race and diversity and equity have been around for much longer than this, but it's something that I think we are, as a nation, trying to have more conversations about. I know that I saw that sales about how to be an ally and an anti-racist were some of the best-selling books of 2020. So people are invested in reading more, educating themselves, talking about it. I know within my own personal book club, we tried to read some of those books and talk about those things and educate ourselves more. So in this project too, we are asking you to think about your own identity and how that often revolves around how you identify as a race or ethnicity and the way that your life has played out as a result of that. One of the books that I read as part of Western's employee book club was Waking Up White. And as I mentioned on the assignment sheet area, this is the book that La Crosse Reads, which is a citywide program, is reading and having discussions about. And in that book, a woman who is from a pretty socially advantaged class, a white woman, talks about how she woke up to realize the privilege of her being white. And we want you to take a look at a couple different mini films, most of them put together by the New York Times. And the nice thing about these is that they're only 2 to 5 minutes usually. And so when I scanned through the list and pretended like I was writing this assignment, I started with the one on a conversation with white people on race, because I am white and I identified with that. And watching that video made me think about some things about my own upbringing and my own conditioning that I might have received, whether that was intentional or unintentional. I grew up in Missouri in the northeast corner near Iowa and Illinois, and I grew up in an area that still had slave cabins on some of the property. I grew up in an area that was very much divided between North and South, and I grew up as a descendant of John Wilkes Booth, the man who shot Abraham Lincoln. My community was very much white, and the messages that we received as white people interacting with people of color were not great messages. When I was in 4th grade, a Black boy moved into my community and was in my grade, and he was the only Black boy in my entire school of about 300. And he and I became friends, and it was disheartening to learn quickly that people did not approve of that. We sat together at baseball games and basketball games, and I was told by certain family members that that was going to lead to trouble and that it would not reflect well upon my family. And this was in the 80s. I am a 44-year-old woman who has since moved to larger communities and interacted with lots of different people. But I remember thinking at the time that that was wrong, and it made me angry, but I didn't feel like I could voice that easily to my family and friend group. So I want you to do the hard work of watching a couple of these videos. You don't have to watch all of them. Think about the upbringing you've had. Think about messages that you've gotten, again, whether they were direct, explicit messages from people in your community or just kind of insinuations about how you should interact with people or how you should think about things. And we've tried to put some questions that I've taken from the Lacrosse Reads book that get you to think about how you have either been able to not think about your own race and ethnicity or how it's been a primary focus of your own life. So take a look at those. In this essay, you are using plentiful examples. That's all an illustration essay is. And so you are going to try to think about the interactions that you've had in your own life, the ways in which you have either had to think about it or not think about it, and how you want to go forward in your life. Education is about learning all the time, and that's one of the exciting and hard things about learning is that it's a continual process. There's no end date to it. We are constantly learning something new, but that's the exciting thing, to challenge ourselves to move beyond what we know and to look at other people's points of view and perspectives. So that's one of the goals, is to really think about who you are, where you come from, what makes you you, and how that helps you to navigate through the world, whether that impedes it or progresses that. So that's a little bit on Project 2. In the next coming weeks, we will post some examples from previous student essays for you to take a look at. But for now, watch some of those mini films. You don't have to watch them all. Find a couple that you like, and then find one that you think you can focus on and relate in your writing. And then we'll move forward in the coming weeks on how to put that together. All right, everybody, stay warm and have a good week.